Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're back with another video about tariffs. In our last one, we talked about the impact on consumers directly when they purchase products from AliExpress or Temu or other places. Today we're going to look at how tariffs are impacting one industry in particular, the retro gaming industry. This is not a very big industry, it's a very small one, where we've got some very talented engineers, many of them located here in the United States, who design products but can't get them manufactured here, and the only place they can go is China. And now they're seeing their costs increase, not necessarily directly to the consumer, but to them, raising their manufacturing costs, which in turn lowers their profit margins and requires price increases. Does it mean that all of their products are going to go up by 145%, which is the current tariff rate? No, but it does impact their margin, and you will see prices creeping up. And it's not just impacting the little guys, the big guys are getting hit here as well. Microsoft announced a bunch of price increases on their Xbox consoles, which are getting a bit long in the tooth these days. They've been out for a couple of years now. The low-end console, the Series S, is going up about 26% from $299 to $379. And although this is not 145%, which is what those tariffs cost, presumably Microsoft is absorbing some of that cost, passing some of it along to the consumer, and they're also raising the prices of games to about $79 each. And that, of course, will help subsidize their losses on the hardware side. So these price increases are happening both for the little guys and the big guys, but the little guys get hit a lot harder because they often can't afford to absorb a 145% increase in their cost of their materials. Louis Rossmann has a video talking about a small maker in a different portion of the consumer electronics industry who is really in trouble here because he's got a product that he designed, it's ready to ship, but if he brings it over, he's going to be in debt. So there are a lot of repercussions of this. Now, when it comes to the retro gaming community, most of these companies are smaller ones. So for example, RetroTink just paused sales to the US market until they can figure out what's going on. After things settle down, they're going to be coming up with price increases to offset the cost of tariffs on their manufacturing. Another familiar face in the retro gaming community is Porkchop Express, who's the owner of Mr. Add-ons. He designs products and sometimes makes them here in the US and other times brings them in finished. And in this case, he had a shipment of finished products coming in where he's getting hit now with a $1,700 plus tariff charge on the products that he's already paid for and designed. And he's going to have to either raise his prices or eat the tariff cost. And that brings us to today's interview with Nick Mueller from HDRetrovision. They are manufacturers of these really nice engineered cables for retro video game consoles. This is one that I bought a little while back for my Sega Genesis and other compatible Sega consoles. And as you can see here, there's some actual electronics to this cable. They have a potentiometer for adjusting the brightness level. They've got some audio outputs here, very high quality component cables. When you plug this thing into your 4K television with one of those RetroTink scalers, it is indistinguishable from an FPGA console, yet you're playing on the real hardware. And the quality level of their cables is top notch. And so they're more of a premium offering, but for those who are connoisseurs in the retro gaming world, they are a very respected brand that delivers very high quality products. And as you'll hear in a minute, they're getting impacted quite significantly by these tariffs, so much so that they've changed their Twitter handle to be a formerly profitable company, or at least in their description. And that's due to the fact that their costs are going up substantially. And what they've done at the moment is paused all of their imports until they can figure out the best way forward. So without further ado, let's hear from Nick Mueller from HDRetrovision and see how these things are impacting him. So joining me now is Nick Mueller from HDRetrovision, and he makes some amazing cables in his company, and certainly the last 5 years have been a bit difficult for small manufacturers, and this is yet another wrinkle. So why don't we start off, Nick? First of all, what do you manufacture and design, and what's your market?
Sure. Yeah. Our purpose of our company really is to kind of preserve original consoles, original video game consoles. I know there's like a lot of alternative paths now. People have FPGA systems. We're really focused on letting you take your original Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, PlayStation, hook it up to your modern TVs. So the part of that is manufacturing component video cables so that you can kind of get the highest quality signal out of those consoles and then do whatever you want with it. A lot of people still play on CRTs that have component inputs. And then other people are plugging it into devices like RetroTinks or maybe a capture card for streaming kind of thing.
So to some degree, you have to do a bit more selling of your product because it is, although it's a cable, it's not a commodity cable. It's something a little different. So you have to get into a particular clientele who's willing to understand the differences and make some investments in hardware to get there. And I guess that makes this whole situation with the tariffs all that much more difficult because you're already at a premium price. You have a consumer coming on Amazon, or I guess Castlemania Games is another place you sell, a number of other places as well.
Yep.
They see your product priced higher, not all that much higher, but certainly higher. What happens now after tariffs take effect?
I mean, with the tariffs set the way they are, I mean, it's basically a non-starter for us to even exist, right? So we have inventory that we purchased before tariffs, but with a tariff like 145%, this completely wipes out any profit margin. I know our products are priced at a premium, but that's not reflective of us having like 95% margins. It's not at all the case. So a tariff like that just wipes out our profit margin and some. So basically, we wouldn't be able to sell under these conditions. I mean, alternatively, we could price a PlayStation 2 component cable at $60 and sell maybe 3 a year, but that's not, practical for us to continue existing.
And so this is going to impact any future shipments coming. Obviously, you have stock in right now. I'm sure you probably hurried to get as much in as you could before it takes effect. And being a small manufacturer, you're not bringing in container loads, right? You're coming in on a air shipment or something smaller.
No, we ship in on ocean freight typically. So we'll do a few pallets. We're not filling up an entire container.
Right.
We're not Apple that can find out that this is going down and then fly in 5 air shipments of 100,000 iPhones overnight. So yeah, we come in on ocean freight, and this takes some planning, right? Like, there's lead times. So
Right.
if I want to place an order, I can do it today, and they will tell me this order will be ready to ship in around 3 months, typically 2 to 3 months, depending on which product. The ones with the circuit boards are a little more complicated to test and build. Then you have probably 4 to 6 weeks of ocean time, and so this is like already 4.5 months from the time I say, hey, we need stuff, to the time that it arrives at our warehouse. So this is not like something where I can find out on, March that this is coming and then sneak in a bunch of stuff. So whatever we have is actually from an order we placed in November. And I had been planning to order more, prior to this escalation. And those plans have been put on pause. And on top of that, we did have an order that was supposed to ship to us. I think I got maybe 2 weeks ago, I got an email like, hey, the stuff's ready. I'm like, can you hold on to it for a while so we can figure out whether we need you to just dump it in the ocean, or we're working on an alternative plan with Castlemania, who you mentioned, of maybe warehousing some of it in Canada as like a holdover.
Right, because you don't get hit with the tariff there, and then you obviously have tariffs coming in later, but at least you can control the costs a little bit. And I think what people don't realize too in this is that you're a small American company. You and your partner are designing these products here in the United States and having them manufactured overseas and shipped back over.
Yes.
So are you looking at other countries? Can you make them here? Why just China?
So I can do a little bit of history. When we first kind of came up with the idea for these cables and having a company, and went through like a Kickstarter to do this, we had originally researched building cables in the US. And we quickly found out that it was just not economically viable. That the US doesn't have a small consumer manufacturing infrastructure that would let you do this. I mean, our cables would probably be 2 to 3 times as expensive if we made them in the US just for us to exist, and they would have been lower quality.
So even more than what the tariff would be now versus making them here in the U.S.
Yeah, this doesn't really incentivize us to build in the US, contrary to the stated aims of this whole thing. It
Right. Because you can't
incentivizes
afford to
us
build a factory tomorrow if you wanted to, right? I mean,
right. No.
you're
Yeah.
using contract manufacturers now overseas,
Yes.
and so what you're saying is that in the U.S. there was not a contract manufacturer that could meet the standard.
Correct. Yeah. There's just the quality would have been lower based on what we looked at, and the price would have been much higher. So yes, this does incentivize us to look for a factory elsewhere. But two things I'll point out with that. Number one, that would probably, I mean, just conservatively take a year to flesh out, right? This is not something I can flip overnight. I'm not Nike. This means that I have to go find 5 or 6 more places, maybe in Vietnam, whatever, that
Fly over
have the
there.
capacity. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to get samples from them, probably reject a bunch of samples. I mean, this is all stuff that happened behind the scenes before we even started building cables. It took us a year and a half after the Kickstarter to deliver a product. We got dozens of samples that were just garbage until we found a contract manufacturer that was very high quality and could produce what we wanted. The contract manufacturer we use, the main products that they typically make in that factory are medical devices, actually. So these guys, this is not like the cheap Chinese product factory that gets criticized so often.
Right.
Now this is high. There are very qualified, high skilled engineers that work there. We've gone back and forth with them to fix issues here and there. Automation there is a big reason why they can produce things so cheaply. It's not that we're paying people 5 cents an hour. It's that these processes are highly automated in a very advanced facility. And so to find that somewhere else would be a challenge. And then number two, once I do find that, what is to guarantee me that this whole thing doesn't happen all over again with whatever country I happen to find, that can produce cables for us. So I could spend a year of my life, and then all of a sudden, this country is now hit with 145% tariffs. So it's really tricky if I have to do that. I mean, maybe that's our only option if we have to survive, but it's not like an easy overnight thing.
And you mentioned Vietnam. So Vietnam, Apple's making stuff there. I just got a bunch of Asus Wi-Fi access points made in Vietnam also. And when the tariffs were announced, they were at one level. They got reduced, but it's like a 90-day stay here. So it's not necessarily going away until we don't have any certainty there, which is hard because now you're going to chasing around. And this is not as simple as just going to a manufacturer and making an order, right? You've got to develop prototypes. You have to go back and forth a number of times, likely physically, to get over there.
Yeah.
So what's the QA process like for you?
QA process is actually probably as involved as designing a product themselves. So we build for our factory test fixtures, and the test fixtures consist of this big mechanical setup. It's like a big metal device, got a clamp on it, and what they do is the pick and place puts components on a circuit board. They take those circuit boards, put it into the test fixture, clamp it down, and then run a sequence of automated tests through an FPGA and microcontroller that essentially feed signals into the circuit board and measure them out on the other end to validate that the circuit board is producing what it's supposed to. So they do this for every circuit board because that circuit board then gets overmolded. And if, let's say, they accidentally put a 10 ohm resistor instead of a 100 ohm resistor, or some capacitor or a diode gets put in the wrong direction, that whole circuit board is garbage. And once it's overmolded, now you have a cable that you just have to throw out. And that's all the, cabling and RCA connectors and the console connector, all this stuff was just wasted because you made an error on the circuit board.
And you're paying for
So
all of it.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so you've got this test fixture that needs to validate those circuit boards. And then actually there's a second um, set of validation that happens once it's overmolded. The test fixture also has ports for the console connector and RCA, so it can run those same set of tests through the finalized cable. So it's a pretty extensive QA process. Um, you know, even I could go on for 30 minutes about the whole process of just designing the software to test these cables, because you have to come up with like acceptable ranges on voltages for every type of signal. It's very complicated. So like it's almost a project on top of designing a cable for a console, and but it's also part of the reason why we have very low failure rate. I mean, we're probably less than like 1 in 1,000 cables fails, and usually when that happens, it's because of some poorly done soldering joint somewhere, which is going to happen when you're making a bunch of stuff. But our failure rate has been really low because of this. So it's a big process.
This is fascinating too, because I never realized how much goes into just making a cable. And clearly you have certain standards that you want to reach with it. And I'm doubting that your competitors are doing the same thing. And by competitors, I mean the lower cost $3, $4, $5 cables that are sitting, on e-commerce sites. And what do you think is going to happen on their side? Because to some degree, you're disadvantaged here. They can afford perhaps to absorb it. They're bringing over container loads at a time. They can spread out that cost in a way that you can't. It might also harm consumers too, right? The quality of these products could go down because you could probably choose to put cheaper components in and make the product cheaper. You would.
Sure, of course. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would rather just not sell something than sell something cheap. But yeah, that's of course the case. I mean, the higher your profit margin is, like if their cables only cost a couple bucks to produce and they're selling them to you for 30, and they've got a lot of margin in there. Because remember, the tariff is charged on their cost of goods. So
Right.
if their cost of goods is $2, maybe their cost goes up to $4. Okay, so they take a little bit less profit, or they raise their price by $2. Maybe you
Right,
don't
or they split
notice.
the difference. And for the
Yeah,
consumer's perspective, like they're not looking for a cable every day, so they're not going to see the jump in price from
exactly.
6 months ago. But for
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
it's a lot more.
Our margins are not that high, so yeah, it would. But I mean, this is the case in any industry. It's not unique to HDRetrovision, right? Tariffs in general are a tax on consumers, and the ways you can resolve that are lowering quality, you know, or just selling less. And so this is going to be a problem far beyond like the retro gaming industry.
Right.
I don't make it specific to me.
Right, because this is not something that's targeting a specific industry. We've had trade wars before where it was targeting this particular industry. I think back to the 80s chip shortage, which was triggered by a trade war against Japan over semiconductor prices.
Yeah.
And this is every single product at the moment coming in from China, with the exception of smartphones and computers. But
Yeah.
they're still. I think the smartphones and computers are still at the 20% base rate, just not the extended 145%. So
Yeah.
125, whatever the number is. It's still a lot.
Yeah. Well, you nail one of my biggest issues with this whole thing is whenever you have something like this to me is not capitalism, it's crony capitalism. I don't have a representative that I am buddies with that cares about HDRetrovision, but Apple gets to go be like, hey, maybe you need an exemption for the stuff we make. There's no exemption for me. This is the opposite of capitalism. It leads to special interests basically buying influence and getting around these things. So yeah, maybe Apple's only paying 20%. That doesn't happen for me.
I think the bottom line for consumers right now is that no one's really felt it yet because of the lead times, right? The inventory of consumer products that we're going through right now is from prior shipments. It's going to start
Correct.
hitting pretty soon. It's hitting you obviously right now to the point where you've now, if I heard you correctly, you've canceled all your orders. You have
Yep.
nothing coming in at the moment because of the uncertainty here.
Yep.
What happens to HD Retrovision now after your inventory sells out? I know you said you're maybe looking at other countries, but you're not sure what you want to do. I mean, is this the end of the company, or is it going to go on pause? What's your plan?
I mean, yeah, I think we've got enough capital reserves to hold us over for a while. So it's not like the end tomorrow because well, like the day we run out of inventory. I don't have a great, our industry is harder to predict. Like Apple can like nail down, I'm going to sell $30 billion of iPhones.
Right, right.
Our stuff sells in waves, comes and goes.
Yep. And
So
there's some
I can't
trends
tell
to it,
you.
right? Like different
Yeah.
consoles have different trends. You've been doing this long enough now
Yeah.
that the N64 is now the thing, right? Like before
Right,
it was
yeah.
the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, when we first started selling cables, Super Nintendo cables were probably outselling Genesis 2-1, and now it's flipped. I don't know how to predict market trends in this. So
Right.
what I say is we probably have enough inventory to get us maybe to like right before Black Friday.
Okay.
And then because of lead times, let's say this gets resolved tomorrow, I got to
Good.
place an order immediately.
Right.
Otherwise, we're going to be out of product for some time. And for Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo cables, maybe that's not such a big deal in the grand scheme of things, but everybody's going through this.
Right.
Right.
This is the entire
So,
economy.
yeah.
So.
Yeah. Let's say you make strollers and you've decided I can't afford to produce baby strollers anymore. I got to put this on pause. You can't just snap your fingers and see baby strollers back in the stores. There may be a period of empty shelves where you just can't get certain things. So it really depends on what your lead time is, to determine can I make this, how big this gap is going to be when I don't have stuff on the shelves.
Right.
So that's going to vary between industry. And I guess we'll see. I mean, I think the damage is already started, but you haven't seen it translate yet.
And I know just before this happened, you were on the other side finally of component shortages going away and getting back into the ability to actually make stuff again. How different do you think is this tariff situation versus the prior crisis of component shortages and inflation that you also had to deal with? Because certainly the ocean freight charges went through the roof too. Is this different, or is this just a different type of challenge, or is this more significantly impactful to your business than that was?
This is very similar in a lot of ways. The whole idea in 2020 that you could just pause the economy and start it back up again on a dime, I think it was very clear that is just not the case. And let's say tariffs go away in a month or 2 months, whenever that 90-day thing is. Let's say we magically get trade deals with all these countries, which I'm very skeptical about. You're going to have every producer on the planet trying to produce stuff at the same time. Like I said before, our cables get made in the same factories that are producing medical products. Take a guess which is going to get prioritized if we all need to start making stuff again at once.
Right.
It's not
Medical
going to be
products,
the video game cables.
Right, just like
So
before.
maybe,
Right?
maybe my lead times go up quite a bit because we're all trying to make stuff at the same time. You mentioned the shipping thing that happened 2021. All of a sudden, our ports are jammed up. So your cost to take stuff over on a boat temporarily is going to go through the roof. It's going to take longer to make it through the port. There's all these cascading effects in the economy beyond just the tariff itself. So, yeah, I see kind of a lot of similarities between now and what we tried in 2020. It's going to cause pain.
Well, in the meantime, there is inventory right now for people who want
that's
to.
right.
It's like if you wanted an HD Retrovision cable, there's nothing else like them on the market. Now is the time. Just don't buy all of it at once. Get one or two. But where can people find your products? Now, I see them on Amazon. I see them on Castlemania Games. Where else can they be found?
Yeah, through our website, HDRetrovision.com, there's a link to all the guys that sell our product. We do sell some on Amazon. We have them at Castlemania and Stone Age Gamer in the US. And then we have Retro Stuff Canada. And we have some guys in Switzerland, Consoles for You, and 8-Bit Mods in the UK. So we have a little bit of a foreign presence. And, I mentioned before when I have to deliver the next batch of cables, maybe it only goes to those Canada, UK, Switzerland guys, because it's just not practical to bring them into the US. So we have some runway, but I don't know how long it'll last.
Right, so get in those orders, and I wish you all the best here. It's been, I've been following you on Twitter when it used to be called that, X now, and I know how much you struggled with the pandemic issues, the craziness of being. We could do a whole other podcast about the experience of being a small seller on Amazon and what that involves and all the returns that you get from that. And now we've got the tariff situation, so it's certainly been a master's or even a doctorate in international business that you've been through. Video game cables here.
I get myself in a little bit of trouble on Twitter expressing, which I don't even consider all the time expressing opinions. I'm just sometimes just stating facts, and people get mad at me for just mentioning the fact that this is going to adversely impact us. But yeah, it's been a real lesson in international trade over the last 5 years. But hopefully things get resolved. I really do find it hard to believe that we can have an effective embargo with other countries and it lasts very long. Political interests are just at some point going to have to say, we're not willing to destroy the economy over this. Because that's really what you're doing. It's, tariffs are hurting yourself under the disguise of patriotism. Like I get the notion we want to build stuff here. I would love to build our cables here. It's just in a global trade environment, people specialize in different things, and who can make stuff at the lowest cost at the highest quality is going to win out.
Well, to be continued, I think, and I'm grateful that you came on the show again. I'm really sorry to hear what's going on with things, but I know you and your partner are smart guys, and you certainly navigated some very rough waters before. I have confidence that you'll be able to do this too. But right now, it's certainly there's too much uncertainty in the market to even try to figure out how to plot the next course here. So. I wish you the best on this, and head over to HDRetrovision.com, pick up a cable or two, and we'll bring you back on maybe once there's a little bit more clarity as to where things go from here.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me. I'd love to come back on and give you an update once we figure out what's going on.
So I want to thank Nick for coming on the channel and talking about some of the challenges his business is facing due to these tariffs. We'll try to get him back on in a few months after things settle down to see if there are any new directions that the company is taking. But until then, definitely check out his cables, especially if you are a retro game enthusiast. They are awesome. And until next time, this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.